Hello, this is Professor Chinmay Saha from Indian Institute of Space Science and Technology. I am the Region 10 coordinator of IEEE Microwave Theory and Technology Society. I welcome you all in this new episode of Fireside Chat. As you know, Fireside Chat is an exclusive initiative of IEEE Microwave Theory and Technology Society's Region 10, where we talk, interact, and try to learn from one of our seasoned MTTS expert about their career trajectory, career journey, their success, their challenges, and so on. So let's hear the new speaker of this new episode.
Good evening, good morning, and good night, everyone, wherever you are in the world. We are very pleased, we are overwhelmed to have you with us for this initiative that we call Digital Affairs of the MTTS Region 10, which we have started this session known as Fireside Chat. It is a great opportunity for us to know our leaders and draw inspiration. Could you summarize your academic journey from studying electrical engineering at Shukege University and University of Michigan to becoming a distinguished faculty and member at UT Dallas, highlighting the pivotal moments and influences that shaped your career path?
Okay, that's a mouthful, but thank you, first of all, very much for giving me this opportunity. And I apologize because I think we had scheduled it for March, and then I sort of fell off my calendar. But I'm very excited to be here, and so really to talk about my career from when I did my undergraduate work at Tuskegee University, and that's in Alabama, and then moving on to the University of Michigan, which is in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Then leaving there and moving to Arizona to work at Motorola Semiconductor Product Sector, which became Freescale Semiconductor, and then eventually leaving Freescale and going to University of Texas at Dallas. So now I've been here at UT Dallas since 2007, and I chose to go to Tuskegee first because they offered me a partial scholarship. Secondly, because I had friends that were deciding to go there. I was going to be, at that time, majoring in electrical engineering. Really wanted to pursue computer engineering, at least I thought I did, but that university didn't have a computer engineering program, so they had electrical. So when I originally got there, because it's 8 hours from my hometown, I was very homesick and didn't really enjoy it. Although I did have one friend from high school who was there, and so she was not in my major, but I met some people who helped me sort of navigate going through the undergraduate program there. And the very first semester was kind of challenging, transitioning from high school to college. But then after I got there and really learned how to study better, my goal became to really make as many A's as I could while I was, especially in program classes other than the electrical engineering department. I would give myself a pass, say, for example, in physics or calculus 3. But if I was taking like one of our liberal arts courses, I said I have to make an A, and I have to figure out what I have to do in order to get an A. And that really did boost up my GPA when it all boiled down to it. And so I did some internships while I was there. Really three internships at Sandia National Labs in Albuquerque. And when I was there, I met someone who said, "Hey, if you went to graduate school and got a master's degree, you could make more money." So I was like, "Okay, I like that idea." And I decided, okay, I can get a master's degree because he said you could go to school for like a year and a half, make maybe $10,000 more than you would if you had your bachelor's degree. So that was my decision to do that. But Tuskegee is a historically black college and university, so the majority of the students there are African American, but my professors were not. There were not very many female professors, and there weren't very many African American professors. And I didn't mention this, but when I when I was graduating from high school, I really wanted to teach. I wanted to teach math, but my teachers at school were like, don't go into education because there's really no money in it. So they said, go into engineering. And so I said, okay. And so that's how I found myself in engineering. And then at some point coming back from those internships, I was looking at my professors. I was like, no one looks like me, you know. So how could I teach engineering at the college level? And so I talked to the department head, and he said, well, you have to get a PhD in order to teach. And so I said, okay, well, I like school. I'd already decided I was going to get a master's degree. So I said, okay, I can do a PhD. Now, nobody in my family had a PhD, so I didn't know what that meant. But I just said, I like school. It should be okay. I looked into getting a fellowship and just looked around trying to figure out where I should go. And one of the things in electrical engineering that I like challenges. And so when I took EMAG, the first course, everyone hated it. And it was very hard, but because everybody hated it, I sort of liked it because nobody else wanted to take it. And so I just started taking anything else within that program that was associated with electromagnetics. And I remember one time we took probably it's sort of called microwave measurements, and we got exposed to a vector network analyzer. And there were maybe 5 people in the class, and the professor wouldn't even let us touch it. It was so valuable. He was just like, just look at it. And I also remember that I had to do a senior design project, and it's very different from what senior design projects are like now because a lot of students do them in groups. But I had an opportunity to work with a professor, and we worked on like an electromagnetics problem. So, everything was sort of gearing me in that direction. And so when I started to look at graduate schools, I said, okay, that's the field I want to go into. But I didn't have anything other than sort of these experiences in my coursework and just a little bit in the research that I did as an intern, but nobody specifically, was doing exactly applied electromagnetics. I looked at communication systems, for example. So anyway, I visit the University of Michigan. I visit Stanford University. I visit University of Wisconsin. And at Michigan at the time, they had the largest number of expenditures in the area. And I met some of the really good professors. Then I went to Stanford, and there, um, I didn't really get a chance to meet a lot of the professors. So I ended up trying to decide between Stanford and Michigan. And so because Michigan had the number 1 program in applied electromagnetics at the time, I made the decision to go there. And so it was really hard. It's very stressful. And but at one point, I realized that I was supposed to be there, even though it was the hardest thing I've ever done, going through that PhD program, because that was the first time I started to fail, in my opinion, where I started to question, like, am I academically able to do this work? Because it was really hard, and open-ended questions were being asked of me to solve and really to start to think. And so I failed my qualifying exam the first time, and that really was a blow to my confidence. And so I had to really work towards that, and I had family. My mom wasn't near me, but she was, really praying for me to be able to work through this. And my advisor was very helpful. So the second time, because in the PhD program at Michigan, you only had 2 chances. If you don't pass the second time, you have to leave the program. But when I went into that oral exam, I said, I know what I know, what I know. And nobody could take that away from me. And so, fortunately, I passed it. And my advisor was like, I don't think I've ever been as happy for anybody to pass the exam as you. So that was a great milestone, but that was just the beginning. And I know this is a long answer, But after that comes the real hard work of doing the research. And you have to do, academic research a lot of times alone. And so you have to then figure out, like, what are you made of to be able to get through the long days and nights and solving problems and really trying to make decisions and move forward. So I got through that and finished, and then I decided, because I remember I said I wanted to teach, but then I didn't want to teach anymore because I was burned out from grad school. So I went to Motorola, and I got there, and it was like a whole nother world. They don't care about research. They just want products and success and reliability. And so you have to learn how to sort of survive in that environment. And so that was interesting. But then at some point I was there, and the company, Motorola, didn't make some of the same decisions other companies did. They had the market share for cell phones at one point, but then Nokia came in and other companies, Motorola didn't go digital. So they just started to just get to die off. And so I didn't want to leave and go to Intel like many of my colleagues did living in Arizona. But I started to think again about, hey, I'm here in Arizona because this is where the company is, but I could teach. That was why I decided to get a PhD. So I started to pursue that and think about that again. And I had this mentor, and so I was talking to him, and he said, "Well, what do you want to do this year?" I said, "I want to leave. I want to leave the company, and I need you to help me." I had a plan. My advisor had given me a plan before I left graduate school, but I needed someone to help encourage me to do the plan because I had left academia for like 6, 7 years. So I was having a hard time thinking I could get back into it. And so this guy was really my mentor and my accountability partner at the same time to sort of help me work through everything that I needed to get to that point. So anyway, I started in 2007 working at UT Dallas, and that was once again another frightening experience because you go from working in this group and team to now you're working as an entrepreneur. You're a faculty member trying to start a research program, guide students, and it's once again this process of trying to build up your confidence and taking chances in your effort to succeed. And so here I am, 2024, and I survived. So, I know that's the longest answer you've ever gotten, Shrinjoy, but that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Okay.
Definitely. It was a great answer, ma'am. Now we'll move to the next question.
Okay.
Moshik, you can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes. Good morning, ma'am. So
Good
this
morning.
is Moshiki Kola from Heritage Institute of Technology. Currently, I am serving as the chapter chair of IEEE MTTS Region-10 student run chapter. So we are delighted to know from you that throughout your career in this domain, you have worked in industry as well as in academia. What would you say are the key differences you felt between the two fields, some unexpected challenges you faced, and your insights on the same?
So the difference between the two, I would say, in one sense, and when you're working in industry, you're sort of in a group and a team, especially as a sort of a starting engineer. So and for me, the challenge was trying to understand the business. At that time, Motorola had like over 100,000 employees, and they have different sectors. And so there's the semiconductor sector, there's the sector that was sort of associated with business. And I remember going to a meeting where the design group was talking to the semiconductor group, and they were telling us, if you don't do what we ask you to do or make the parts the way we want you to make the part, we're going to buy from TI. And I was like, I thought we were all in the same company. And they're like, no, the business team, they need to build a, system, a phone, or whatever. And so they have to put together their system, and they might pick some different chips. So it was just for me, like I said, understanding where I was and how the business world worked, and how to advance in that field. And one thing I did while I was working in industry is I maintained my relationship with IEEE. So my advisor, because we were talking about how do I transition out of industry into academia, and she said remain active in the IEEE. So I was active in the Phoenix section of IEEE, the Waves and Devices chapter, which was MTTS and like 4 or 5 other societies were part of that. So that allowed me also to meet people, not just where I worked, but also people within the community. And so I think that's extremely important. So then moving back over to academia, starting as a professor, you have to publish. You have to figure out where you're going to publish your work. And so as a student, I was publishing within MTT. And so I had remained, even when I was working in industry, as I said, part of IEEE, part of MTT. So I had friends now on the industry side, but I also had friends through academia who were professors. Some of my classmates were professors. So they helped me kind of navigate the process, because now you're leaving industry. You were a student, so you sort of saw what your advisor did, but now you're supposed to be doing that. So part of that challenge, though, was just feeling confident that I could do the work that I saw my advisor did, because I thought my advisor was a superhero. I mean, she was always everywhere doing everything. And I was like, this is really hard. But just learning how to break things down into smaller pieces, and even moving forward, even if you don't feel like you've got it figured out. Like, I think that's the thing. In industry, you could probably hide sometimes because it's such a big company sometimes that you work for, not a startup. For example, in a startup, you're right in the front. But in academia, as the leader of your team or your students, you're in the front. So you've got to move forward. And really, when I came here, I focused on trying to develop my leadership skills so that I could do well and create my team. So, okay.
Thank you, ma'am. Over to Shuttam.
Okay, so moving on to the third question, uh, I would like to ask you what were the key factors and inspiration that led you to specialize in the front end modules, the millimeter wave frequencies, and like how did your academic and professional experiences guide you towards this niche uh, criteria within the electrical engineering?
Okay, thank you. Good question. So at Michigan, I majored in electromagnetics as my major, and my minor was communication. And I will say that I did not have like a parent or someone guiding me, but somehow when I started to look at the options, I knew electromagnetics was going to be my major. I some somewhere in my, maybe because of the experiences I'd had as an intern, I chose communications. But really, when you say what you just said in your questions, your front end modules, right, are oftentimes for your communication system. So I was getting exposure to communication theory, and at the same time, I was working with my advisor on silicon micromachining for packaging. So it wasn't that I was working, and it was mostly passive circuits, but I was doing that work at 94 gigahertz. So that was millimeter wave, right? And it was for defense applications. Whereas now we're in millimeter wave for commercial application space, for example. So it just, I mean, I couldn't have worked it any better, because when I did join Motorola, though, I first started working on cell phone applications, and it was modeling for cell phones. So I was like, this is 1 gigahertz. Like, what happens at 1 gigahertz? That's like DC. But, of course, that's not true. However, at some point, though, before I left the company, they were working on automotive radar. So it was 77 gigahertz automotive radar. So I was like, okay, I know that space. And the only difference is, as opposed to looking at gallium arsenide, we were starting to look at CMOS or bi-CMOS technology. So, it really was very similar to my experience in graduate school, and just now taking it from, say, a defense sponsored effort to something where eventually the commercial world is pursuing it. But having exposure to some of the issues at in the at these high frequencies, I experienced it as a graduate student. And then what I would say now is, we're doing stuff at 300 gigahertz. My students and I were looking at antennas and things like that. It's just been a graceful transition. And, I couldn't have put it together if I tried. So it's just the grace of God, I'll say.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. I will be passing the stage to Mrinmoy.
Uh, Good evening, ma'am. Could you share a memorable experience or accomplishment from your career that had a lasting impact on you, professionally or personally?
Great. Okay. Wow. That's a loaded question. No, I think I'll go back to my first answer where when I finally, well, not finally, but I passed my qualifying exam because, had I not passed that qualifying exam, I wouldn't be probably sitting before you now. And, but that effort, that study, it really changed my way of thinking. And like I said earlier, I don't think I ever really experienced failure to the extent where it made me a better person then. And so, I began to embrace the concept of failing because when you fail, you realize there's a gap somewhere. Uh, versus if you just pass everything, you don't know if there's a gap. And so once I was able to kind of understand, like, okay, failure is just it's an event. You keep going and you keep moving forward. And so that has been also part of what it means to be a professor because you have to encourage students, you have to grade students, and sometimes you don't give them the grade you want to give them. And but it's going to make our everything better if we recognize that everybody's not going to necessarily get an A. And so that was a thing that has really help my professional and my personal career because that happens in our lives. And so we have to learn how to embrace those things and move on and recognize that we can be overcomers in spite of it.
Thank you, ma'am. Passing on to Shinjoida.
Thank you.
Yeah, Moshiki, you can ask your question.
So, ma'am, our next question is what initiatives are essential for promoting diversity and inclusion in RF and microwave engineering? Can you provide examples of successful programs? How does the IEEE MTT Society support these goals, particularly for women in engineering?
Okay. So we should probably go to the website to get like all the exact information. So I'll start with that disclaimer. Um, but I also want to say that um, right now in RF or microwave engineering, I think that not only do we have, say, a women in engineering or women in microwaves issue, but just have a student issue. I was at a meeting recently and I said, everybody in this room, we understand the hard problem. We understand that we have to go through, say, the tunnel of Maxwell's equations and come out on the other side. But we also have to help young people who get exposed to vector calculus and they start having issues with that we have to encourage them to move forward and to keep going. And so I don't think that that's a diversity problem. I think that's an all people problem these days when things have come so easy. And young people, and I can speak specifically for my experience here in the United States. We sometimes have students who don't want to do some of that hard work. So in general, I think that it's extremely important to help every person, um, whether they choose to go into, say, this field or not, to learn and appreciate mathematics and the complexities of solving any type of problem. Give them a passion for solving problems, and then help them to find ways that if there are any gaps in their knowledge that we can help secure that. And then it's really exposure, exposure, exposure. You don't know um, about things unless you get exposed to those kinds of problems. Like some of my peers, I've heard people say they were very interested in going into space. And so that's how they became interested in engineering, for example. And so that was sort of their, I'll call it their gateway drug to want to move forward. And so for women, I don't want women to think they can't be engineers and look at complicated problems, especially electrical engineering. Sometimes women feel like they should go into bioengineering. Well, yeah, you can, there may be people who are bio inspired, but if you're not bio inspired, there's still opportunities in electrical engineering and electromagnetic. So, don't shut the door just because there aren't that many women in the room. You become that woman in the room and embrace that experience and realize that you're a guiding post for other people who want to move forward in this area. But I think that we're going to. I mean, engineering is still a largely dominated field for men, but women have places here and they can find their place. They can still do the things that are interesting to them. They don't have to, give up their desires to help. That's what I do as a professor. And that's what challenged me at first. I was like, oh, I can't, I'm not like Steve Jobs, right? Steve Jobs is very much associated with coming up with these great ideas and pushing the envelope into the technology that we use. And I never felt like that kind of person, but I did want to help people. And so I talked to a professor, I remember when I was early in my career, and he said it takes all kinds as a professor. It doesn't take, everybody can't be Steve Jobs. He needed people to support him to bring to bear the vision that he had. Uh, so that's diversity, right? Being able to be confident in what it is that you have in your skill set that you bring to the table, whether it's in industry or in academia, and just move forward in that, develop your skills so that we understand the problem all together, but everybody's going to bring a different probably perspective to how to answer those kinds of problems. And so what the society really tries to do is bring together young people, you know, to conferences. We have this for our major conference, IMS. We have a PhD student sponsorship program that brings students who've never come to the conference. We furnish their housing. Their advisor has to get them there. Their first or second PhD student who's never come to that conference. So they may not know a lot. They don't have to have a paper to get there to experience that. And then we're doing that in the Region 10 conferences. And so we're doing that now globally at other regional conferences, trying to bring young people to the atmosphere, to the place where all the networking and idea generation is happening. So you can sort of catch the bug, again, that, gateway drug, so that you too can be addicted to, what we're addicted to, which is advancing technology for humanity from the microwave and RF world, like whether that's wireless systems, space systems, all the things that we do, communication systems, like we're prevalent everywhere. It's just so amazing what we have the opportunity to do in this field. So, and it's only getting better, right? Everybody else has now realized, oh, we should do this at not just 1 gigahertz, but 26 gigahertz and 30, I mean, not 34, but, we just keep going higher in frequency and, the arrays, just the technology is just super, super cool. And it's all based on Maxwell's equations, right? Wavelength. All, we just think about operating frequency. It's like, it's magic, but it's not. It's not magic. It's physics. So, okay, that was a lot. I'm sorry.
That was a great answer, ma'am. And I can personally vouch for the student program because I have been a part of this for long. And we also really, really want to see you in NAPCON this year, so that you can come to India and we can meet you there.
Okay,
Now,
go ahead.
that's what we wish for.
Thank you.
Okay, so finally, the last question, but very important question for all of us, especially the youngsters. What is your advice to youngsters like us to become the future Dr. Rashaunda Henderson, a very successful engineer, passionate leader, and a legend of the field?
Okay, so be who you are. First of all, whoever you are, whoever Masika is, be who you are. Don't try to be me. If you're the type of person, like I'm introverted, like you may not know this, but I am introverted. So if you were to see me at a conference, you probably won't see me just all over the place. Um, but there are sometimes situationally that you do have to be all over the place, right? If I'm a teacher and I go into a classroom, I can't just sit there and watch my students. I've got to engage with them. So just I always so be who you are. So don't lose who in sight of who you are, but also be someone who's what I call now situational awareness. So when you go into a room, take into consideration what's going on and see if you can fulfill a role in that space. Like if you need to help someone. So there are times when I've gone into the room not wanting to lead, but seeing that there was no leader. So then I said, well, let me step up and, help facilitate what's going to happen. And then maybe I can step back because, there are people who do want to, lead and take ownership of things, but, be willing to step in and step up and offer a hand. I really focus on servant leadership. Like I want to help. Once again, that's sort of what resonates with me. Um, and so I try to find opportunities to do that. And then, I mean, start small. Like as your level of influence will increase. You don't have to do the biggest thing, but it's important to learn, what's going on around us so that we can be able to move forward to those next levels and help. Uh, but the other thing I think is it's just important to make friends. I was at IMS recently, and we were talking about the difference between nice and being kind, and I've come to realize that being kind is better than being nice. So, but make friends, be considerate of people. Like everything we learned in the kindergarten, when we first started school, still applies. And if you take that with you and be gracious and you have aspirations and goals and things that you want to do, just continue to pursue those and don't feel like there's not enough of the pie, right? We look at a pie chart and you're like, oh, it's getting split up and there's nothing left for me. There's going to be stuff for you to do. And so don't feel like you got to hold on to everything. Be willing to sacrifice and give up things so that other people can also take part in what's going on around you. And that's going to help elevate you more than you think. And, that's something that I've learned. Like, I don't have to try to do it all. I can open the door and let other people come in and they may go ahead of me and that's okay. So, it's really, I guess, about life skills. Like we'll pick up the technology, the technical pieces of it, but if you're a good person and you go into things with a good heart, then you're going to find the success that you desire. And you're going to go to sleep feeling good about, your experience. And then even if somebody doesn't acknowledge you or you're going to be okay with that as well because you've done what you wanted to do from your heart and that's going to be the thing that helps you rest well. So okay.
That was a very meaningful answer, ma'am, and it was a great experience. I hope you liked it as well. So, like, this is our initiative, and
Thank
you can give us some feedback if you want. So, like,
no.
it's good.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, It, I mean, first of all, it's nice seeing you. Like, it's a fireside chat, but there's literally, I see, Shrindra, you're moving. And so that's, even though I'm like trying to look into the camera and I don't know where my eyes were going, I still was kind of embracing what the audience was giving. And so, that's really helpful. So thank you that you even said, okay, pin you, but look at your entire group because that is what's going to cause, that energy and centered it, across Google, across, you all are 9.5, 10 hours, 10.5 hours ahead of me. And so I so appreciate everything that you all have done to help facilitate this. And you've waken me up. I was asleep, but I'm up now, and I'm very excited for what you all are doing, and because it's being recorded, it's going to last for a very long time digitally, and so that's really cool.
So that will be it for today. And
Okay.
it was a great session. Thank you, ma'am, so much.
Okay. Have a good night. Thank you.